Welcome to The Fight with Teddy Atlas, presented by Dynamic Striking. I'm Ken Rideout, joined as always by the legend and the new face of Box Raw in their new 36 collection, Teddy Atlas. We're coming to you today from Trinity Boxing Gym in Lower Manhattan, where it's about 175 degrees with no air conditioning in late July in Manhattan. We just did the Pacquiao-Spence fight plan, which I think you guys are gonna really like. And I know Teddy and I worked up quite a sweat. Teddy, how you feeling?
I'm glad that I do have this apparel from Box Raw, the 36 line, because it breathes, as they say. It breathes. Listen, I don't know if this is going to be our greatest podcast, but it's going to be our hottest. It's going to be our hottest. There's no doubt about that.
Well, let's get right into it. We had a UFC Fight Night last night, and once again, the UFC delivered value for free on the big major ESPN network. Let's jump right into the co-main. We had Phillips versus Paiva, a flyweight fight at 135. I know you had a chance to watch it. Paiva got the decision. Paiva out of Brazil. What'd you think of the fight?
I thought the decision, the fights, there were a lot of knockouts that, during the night. But the ones that went to decision, I thought there was some, I don't want to say funny decisions, but I don't know, like they made you think. Like you couldn't just say, yeah. It made you think, did he win? And that was one of them. Because Phillips came this close to stopping Paiva in the first round. To get a TKO, whatever you want to properly call it in MMA, ways.
Powers.
Yeah, I mean, he was really close. I mean, credit to Paiva, how great his chin was and how, as most of these guys are, how resilient and tough. I mean, they're just so tough. But it should have, at the very least, been a 10-8 round. I mean, that's how dominant it was. And as I said, that's how close to the cliff Paiva was, to falling off the cliff. And again, incredible. You see it in this sport where Paiva comes back. He comes back in the second and third round. He winds up winning the fight. I don't know that I saw him winning. I give him all the credit in the world for doing what he did and coming back. Period. I don't know. It could have been a draw. For me, it was a 2-point first round. If he wins the next two, it's a draw, right? I mean, it's a 3-round fight. But either way, I thought Paiva came back, won the second round, but they were close. They were close rounds. First round was not close. The round Phillips won was not close. But Paiva won 2 close rounds, and he gets the win. Again, just tremendous heart. Obviously, conditioning, chin, to come back the way he came back.
To your point, it's almost like a prerequisite with these UFC guys. You know that if you don't knock the guy out and stop him, 9 times out of 10, the guy's got more to give. He's not going to just get in his head of oh my God, I'm getting lumped up. Those guys have a short memory when it comes to what happened. To that point, I'm glad you brought that up. Because when sometimes these guys are so ruthless, right? I mean, it looks so ruthless. Even though the guy's semi out of it, they jump on him and they're hitting them with hammer fists, right? Yep. And people are saying, oh my God, is it necessary? Yeah, sometimes it is. In their mentality, it is. Because you have any mercy at all on them, they're going to come back. That's right.
I mean, that's the world they live in. The other thing that I want to close with on that fight is that it always amazes me, the similarities with MMA, with the striking part, and boxing, in my world, where you pay for the same mistakes you pay for as a boxer. And the point I'm going to make is what got Paiva back into the fight was in the second, I believe it was the second round. In the second round, Phillips made a mistake. And it happens in boxing. I talk about it when I was broadcasting fights. I would talk about it all the time. I talk about it now when they do ask me to do stuff on Sports Center or obviously getting ready for a big fight or doing it here. Where the jab is a great weapon, but it can be a dangerous weapon if it's not used properly. If you don't understand to throw it from the right distance. If you throw it from too close, it's like opening a door to let things come in. Opening a window to let, and it ain't flies coming in. It ain't flies coming in. It's wasps. It's wasps.
Murder hornets.
Yeah, murder hornets. And that's what happened. He threw a jab, he being Phillips. He had the fight, and after the first round, he had control of the fight. He throws a jab from too close, bang, counter right hand. Right hand hurts him. And got him back into the fight, got Paiva back into the fight. So again, the same mistakes that haunt you in boxing haunt you in any fighting. Technique is technique. Fighting is fighting. From the striking standpoint. I'm not talking about getting on the mat with the jiu-jitsu and all those different forms of combat. But as far as standing and striking, it's not just throwing punches. It's throwing the punches at the right time, the right punches, at the right distance. Otherwise, you pay a price. But that's what I saw. We get to the main event, I guess.
Let's do it. So in the main event, we had TJ Dillashaw getting a razor-thin split decision over Cory Sandhagen. Before we get into the fight, Teddy, I want to say I have a bit of a hard time with this, with TJ Dillashaw being back so soon. I love TJ Dillashaw. I think he's a great guy. But when you get caught red-handed doping in a combat sport, he made no excuses. To his credit, he did it. Hey, I did it, hand up, I was doping. But 2 years, it feels like it was just yesterday. He's right back in the mix. And again, I like him personally. I just have a hard time with a guy getting right back in there that quick. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I do. Since you brought it up, I thought he paid his debt to society. It's just like somebody, unfortunately, does something, and maybe it wasn't unfortunate, maybe it was his choice, whatever.
Yep.
They go away to jail. I think they deserve a second chance until they tell you by their actions they don't. But I think they deserve. They paid their debt, whatever that debt was. Listen, I'll tell you one thing. It's a lot more than boxing would have delved out. Boxing, you have it all the time. You have guys. First of all, the testing is ridiculous.
UFC has real testing.
Yeah, they have real testing.
They'll catch you.
You're not going to catch guys the way you should in boxing. But when you do, there's no real penalty. There's no real. It's like it amounts to a slap on the wrist. If you're upset about 2 years, my God, I could imagine what you would be reacting to with what these boxing so-called, leaders of the administrators of boxing that is supposed to delve out, accountability. There is none. So it's much more than you would get in boxing. Boxing, every once in a while you get a guy that pays a little bit more of a price, but on the whole, it's not a lot of accountability.
And a good example would be Jarrell Miller. I think he's been caught like 5 or 6 times. It feels like that might be a bit of an exaggeration, but the first couple times I feel like it was kind of almost brushed under the rug until he did the same thing so many times that now it seems like everyone's done with him. But
that's like the new laws in New York where they have the no bail. There was a guy that robbed the bank. He got out. He robbed it 5 more times.
Yep.
You didn't mishear me. Is this working, this microphone? Yeah, it's working, right? It's working, right? 5 times. The guy kept robbing him. I guess he figured, why not? They're not mad at me.
Yeah, they weren't even requiring a bail. They'd arrest him and turn him loose.
They're not upset, And so, look, again, this is serious stuff. We joke a little bit, but it's serious. Robbing a bank, serious. Thank God nobody was hurt. He wasn't hurting nobody. But it's serious stuff. And fighting is serious stuff. It's one thing, I've said it many times, to catch these guys hitting baseballs. I don't really care how much a baseball gets beat up. I don't know. I don't cry about it. You know what, honey, let's make this baseball really get the crap beat out of it. No, I don't really do that. But a man, a woman, getting hit by somebody who's putting stuff in their veins that's illegal, that's going to let them hit a lot harder, that's a problem.
And a lot longer in the case of TJ was using EPO, which gives you crazy endurance.
So listen, again, my answer to you is Dillashaw paid his price. That's what it was. More than I see in boxing. He paid his price. And I tell you where he did get off a little bit free. And I think it had something to do with the outcome of the fight. And I don't see anybody else talking about this. And listen, it wasn't his. He didn't manipulate it. It was just part of the timing of when it happened. His suspension came 2 years. You know, it's a lot. It could destroy someone's career. Really, it could destroy someone's career. But it came during COVID. So really, nobody really talked about that. So really, it wasn't 2 years because everyone was out for a year. So really, it was closer to a year or less.
Yeah.
So he got a little bit of a reprieve. He got a little bit of a reduced sentence. Again, it wasn't, he didn't make that happen. It just happened. But being that it happened during COVID and nobody was fighting for a year, that year would have been lost for everybody. So really, he didn't lose 2 years. So that's something that people should think about when they say, wow, how incredible. And it was incredible that he came back and he won the fight. And we'll get into it now.
Well, I just wanted to mention it because I think it's a part of the story. And the last thing I wanted to say is, like, I think that the bigger problem is, or the thing that got brushed under the rug a little bit is, like, the UFC and the enforcement agency, I think, should put more emphasis on who was helping you with this? Where did you get the prescription? These aren't drugs. You can't just go in the store and buy this stuff. This is like, how? Who's involved? Who else is doing this?
Something to really get to the root of the problem.
Exactly, and I think it had to do with, maybe some other teammates. He would allege, I think, that other teammates had been doing this in the past, and it was kind of like an unspoken thing. Nevertheless, let's get into the fight itself. I just thought that should be addressed because it was part of the story. This fight, like I said, was razor thin. I said to Rob right when it ended, I thought that TJ might have edged him. I know you thought that Sandhagen might have edged it, but it was that close, and the judges had it as such. One judge had Sandhagen by a round, 2 judges had Dillashaw by a round. What'd you see in the fight, and what was the key takeaways for you?
I'll tell you, I'll start with what I felt, rather than only what I saw, what I heard, and what I felt. First of all, I have nothing but respect for both guys. Incredible. Let me put my photo here. To both of you. Incredible. But it just felt like Dillashaw was being almost rooted for. Like he was being favored during the night. I mean...
You mean from the commentators?
From everything. Just everything. Like, even when the betting came in, the betting line on Vegas, that, when the fight was still this close, that he was the favorite if you did real live betting.
Oh, the live action.
Betting. Yeah, the live action. Just like almost like they knew who was going to win. Yeah. Like really, because there was nothing to decipher from what you saw in the cage, really too much.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, he's the favorite. Of course, he went in as a dog. Dillashaw being he went in as a dog. And then all of a sudden, during the real live action betting, he's a favorite. I'm thinking, gee, do they know something? Vegas is pretty sharp. And listen, I'm not starting with conspiracy theories, but I'm doing what I always do. I'm saying what I feel. And what my experience and judgment and instincts tell me. And what I'm not afraid to say. Because I could give two hot, you know what, and it is hot. People don't like it because if it's what I believe, I think it should be said. And I ain't howling for my meals. I'm not doing that to stay on one side or the other. I'm just saying what I believe that needs to be said. So there was just a feeling that Dillashaw was like the anointed one, like the chosen one, like they wanted him to win. And let's not forget what his story was, and how exciting his style is. That means something. Brings him more fans, maybe. And he's got a big fan base. And he was a champion. This kid hasn't become a champion yet. He hasn't gotten to that point. So, I don't know. It just felt that way.
Hey, guys, just want to take a quick break to give a shout out to one of our favorite sponsors, Athletic Greens. We say it all the time. It's one of the products we all use every day. Teddy and I use it. I use it when I travel. I never leave home without it, honestly. It's made from 75 whole food sourced ingredients. We got probiotics, prebiotics, antioxidants, the whole 9 yards. It's really all you need for your body's health and immunity, considering insurance policy, especially during insurance policy for your health, for your body's immunity. Especially during these COVID times, it's one of the things that they've talked about incessantly is the importance of vitamin and vitamin supplementation. If you are exposed to COVID, can reduce the effects of the virus. So, hey, even if it might work, it's worth the shot. You don't want to get sick if you can avoid it. Athleticgreens.com. Use the promo code ATLAS for 10 free travel packs with your first purchase. Again, I love the travel packs. So check them out, athleticgreens.com/Atlas.
As far as the fight went, first round, I always talk about geography. And who gets the position in the cage that they need to best suit their talents, their abilities. And, well, with Dillashaw, you got a short, physically fire hydrant, type guy, really strong. He's better on the mat.
Incredible wrestler,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's much better on the mat than Sandhagen is. And he wanted to get close. He got close. He got his hands on him. He got his grips on him. He got him up against the fence. He got close. He landed some shots too. He got to the geography, if you will, the territory he needed to get to, and he won the first round. I don't think there was any arguing. I thought. Now listen, I'm going to say something because DC made a good point. Daniel Cormier, and I have a lot of respect for all their guys. DC said, it's about, touched on what I talk about. It's about kind of, I don't remember the terminology exactly, but cage position, basically.
Yep.
Don't take me for verbatim, but cage position, where he got the cage position, he being Dillashaw, that he needed because he got him up against the cage. He got his hands on him. He got to the position that a grappler would want a guy that's better in grappling would want to get into. And so he got into it. I looked at it a little differently. And listen, I defer to him. He's one of the greatest that has ever done MMA.
Two-weight division champion simultaneously.
One of the greatest light heavyweight of MMA history and great heavyweight. But for me, I'm looking, and you can only look at it through your own lens. I'm looking at it through a different lens. I'm the first to say it. I'm looking at it through a boxing lens. That Sandhagen controlled when they were striking, and there was a good amount of time they were doing that. When they were striking, he controlled the range and spots that he needed to control. And where, obviously, being longer, being taller, being less physical, being a better striker than a grappler, he wanted to stay on his feet and keep range. He wanted to basically, there were three things he wanted to, really that were part of his formula to win. His legs, range, keeping range with his legs, and pot shotting, counter-punching. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted a counter-punch, he wanted a pot shot on the outside. And he was able to do that to the point that he was able to do it. And I just felt there was back and forth. There was some rounds that were really close. And I could have seen an even round.
Yeah.
I could have seen a draw. I could have seen a draw because there was a round. I don't remember chronologically exactly. My memory is perfect. Where, don't forget, we're in New York, guys, and we get sirens and we get all kinds of things going on. You're in New York. This is the real deal. All right? You're getting the noise, you're getting the sounds, you're getting it all. And I wouldn't have had a problem with an even round. Because sometimes I think they should be used. I don't want a million even rounds. Don't get me wrong. You want to try to find a winner. But sometimes they work.
That fight was as close to a draw as you're going to get.
I just felt, either draw, I agree, or Sandhagen's slight edge. That's just how I felt. I felt that if I was calling a fight, I would have went into one of my things where I would have said, this fight is about catching a guy coming and catching a guy going. And for me, it was. It would have been, it was about Sandhagen catching the shorter, stronger, more physical, Dillashaw coming. and Dillashaw catching, the boxer, Sandhagen, going, which he did.
Yeah.
He caught him going out. He caught him with some shots going back in spots. So I'd say another thing that I think needs to be said, because it was incredible what Dillashaw did. I thought the performance on both was incredible. Both. Nothing but respect. Kudos to both. All my admiration. But as incredible as what he did, 2 years off, whatever, and to come back and not have anything really physically disrupted like timing or show rust.
Yeah.
Another thing, DC was great. Great, DC, you don't need me to tell you, but you are great. Talked about you weren't going to see a lot of rust, or you didn't see a lot of rust, whatever way he put it. And a lot of people would be amazed. They say, wow, why was there no rust shown after you wait for 2 years? And I have an explanation for my world of why. Because inactivity affects people differently according to what your physical approach is, what your style is, what your physical abilities are. Rust will bother and maybe destroy somebody who depends on timing, reflexes, speed. It will definitely hamper them. But somebody who depends mostly on power and strength, time off. Rust doesn't show with those kind of styles, with those kind of athletes. If someone who's very athletic, yeah. You give them time off and it could be a death sentence or really a serious sentence. But when you're a guy who depends on just physicality mostly, time off doesn't destroy you. Those assets, those physical abilities don't get hurt by the time off the way timing does. Proof to it, first fight I think of, Ali Frazier, baby. Ali was 3.5 years away, incredible. I have to do this when I think about Ali. I have to do this. Really, that's how special he was, in and out of the ring. But to come back, I don't think people realize, even to this day, how incredible it was. 3.5 years of his best years.
Yeah.
And a guy who depended on speed, a guy who depended on reflexes, on timing. He comes back and he fights that unbelievable fight, the fight of the century with Frazier. But it hurt him. It didn't hurt Frazier's. Well, Frazier wasn't off. But the guy I was going to say it didn't hurt, and a good case in point again, George Foreman.
Yep.
Forget about 3.5 years off. 10 years. 10 years off, and he comes back. Again, Foreman didn't make his bones. He didn't make his living with timing so much, and reflexes and that stuff, and speed. It was with power, brute force, strength. And being off that long did not impact those abilities the way it would have impacted the other abilities. So Dillashaw got a little bit, I think that explains a little bit of why he was able, again, his heart, his determination, I get you, but how he was able to pull this off. Because he wasn't impacted. His style suited more being off than it would if he had a different style. If he had a style like Sandhagen, or Muhammad Ali, like I talked about. At the end of the day, tremendous fight. Again, I just got the feeling that they wanted this guy to win. And again, please understand, I'm not saying he didn't deserve to win. I'm just saying it felt that way a little bit. And what won the fight for him? Well, it wasn't the judges. I want to say what won it, just so there's no misunderstanding between me and you. I never want a misunderstanding between me and you. I care about you guys. I want you to understand. What won, there's no doubt in my mind what won the fight for Dillashaw. Pressure, toughness, resiliency, and all the other things. But pressure. Pressure breaks pipes. And pressure can break people. it didn't break Sandhagen. He was up to the task for the most part. But it did win. The pressure won that fight. And I think there's some subjectivity in judging, right, Ken?
Yep.
I mean, there is. And there's a criterion, and I wish the judges would understand that criterion all the time. Sometimes they forget, I don't know. And it just seems in my almost 50 years in this business of boxing, striking, there are some judges that prefer pressure. That they get entranced by it. They get taken by it. They get led by it. They get intoxicated. I don't know. But they find it easier to, if it's a tough fight, to vote. They find it easier to vote a guy who puts the pressure on than a guy who's on the outside boxing.
Yep.
I'm not saying that happened. I'm not saying it didn't happen, though. I'm not saying that either. I'm not gonna take a safe way out either. I put myself in this. You know what? I'm gonna have to stand in it and handle it. I am, and I'm not running from it. So I don't know what, but I just know from my experience that sometimes a judge, they will prefer, they would just find it easier to vote for a guy if everything's close that was more aggressive.
Yep.
And if that had an influence, and it might have, and if it did, well, I would say it showed, because there was only one guy who was going to get, the benefit as far as being aggressive, and that was, of course, going to be Dillashaw. So, at the end of the day, that's my take on it, from all angles, all dimensions, and it was some great fights, and I'll finish, and then I'll let you go wherever you want, but I'll finish, and we want to go back and forth, whatever you want to do, but I'll finish by saying that the earlier card of the night, I saw highlights of it.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the whole fights, so I can't tell you which guy and put the name and tag the name with everything, but obviously, it's the guys that won. There were a lot of knockouts. There was a few knockouts, stoppages, and when I was watching it, I was taken and impressed by how good the striking was. I was watching. I would say, "Whoa!" If I didn't know what I was watching, I could think I'm watching a professional boxing match. That's how good the striking was for a couple of those early fights that I saw the spots. I only saw spots, but I saw educated punches, educated combinations. I saw good form, good technique. I saw legs in position, balance, set. I saw body shots. I saw bang, bang, go to the body, boom, boom, go to the head, bang, right back to the body. I mean, I saw pretty stuff. I saw stuff that, again, if I didn't know better, and I think I was watching a professional boxing match. That's how good.
I think that
was Adrian Yanez, whose fight we've watched in the past.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Adrian Yanez.
Thank you, Rob. That's our producer, Rob, giving us that.
Yep. I was going to mention to you that Adrian Yanez, not only his hands are unbelievable, but just seems like the nicest guy in the sport. I sent a tweet out to that effect.
As a matter of fact, I tweeted your tweet.
That's right, yeah. Adrian Yanez, congratulations. He seems like a lovely guy, kind of guy we'd love to have a conversation with at some point. He just keeps winning. He looked awesome. But Teddy, to your point, the hands have evolved so much. The sport has evolved so much. I think back to the early days when a guy like Royce Gracie, who was really one-trick pony, he was a jiu-jitsu, he's the best.
But he was damn good at that.
Damn good. You could never get away with that today in the UFC. You have got to have skill set. You have to be well-rounded. And to your point, to where you can now get a guy that can hold his own with a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, but also look like a professional boxer with the hands with 4-ounce gloves is super impressive. One thing about the Sandhagen-Dillashaw fight I wanted to get your take on was the cut. That cut on Dillashaw was as ferocious as a cut can be, meaning it was like right on the inside corner of his eye. There was only one place the blood was going, straight down into his eye. Have you seen a cut like that in boxing, and were you surprised that they let the fight continue?
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up. You're getting better and better at this. Your instincts. No, seriously. I'm glad you brought that up because I made a note and I didn't see it, but it's in here to touch on the cut. Now I don't want to get nobody crazy because I'm not here to do that, but I do that sometimes because I say what I believe and what my experience and judgment tells me to say. First of all, to your question, yes, I've seen cuts. Horrendous cuts in boxing. Horrendous. I remember a cut that the older Klitschko, I always get their first name mixed up,
was it
had against Lennox Lewis.
Lennox Lewis. I mean, as bad as you like.
I've seen cuts where literally you can see through to the bone. I mean, it's tough. So it's not the worst cut I've ever seen. It was a tough, bad cut.
The place of where it was located to me was what was concerning.
And they did, listen, that's where cut man makes his living. Or where he earns his money, put it that way. And he did a good job. But I just wonder what they allow. Because in boxing, I know you're allowed Avitine, thrombin, and adrenaline.
Yep.
And I tell you, I don't know if they used, I don't think crazy glue is allowed. I'm pretty sure, but I'm not sure what that guy used. But it had a look, and again, I'm not accused. First of all, I don't know what their rules are.
Yeah.
What they're allowed, what coagulant they're allowed to use or not use. But it looked, and again, I didn't have the best view of it, but from the quick view that I had, it almost looked like the cut was getting dark.
Yep.
Now that usually implies that it could be an iron-based coagulant used. That's not allowed in boxing.
Yeah.
That's not allowed. That's not even, forget about it. That's rough. Back in the old days, they used to use that, like Monsol solution was one of them. It might have been the main one. And that, I mean, there was talk about that. Sonny Liston, if you remember the first fight with Ali, when Ali won the title, and the great Angelo Dundee, one of the greatest cornermen of all time. You gotta know what you're doing in that corner to save your guys sometimes when that time comes. And you never know when that time's gonna come. Where Ali came back and said, I'm blind, I can't see. And a lot of guys would have panicked.
Yep.
And Ali said, cut the gloves. And a lot of people don't remember that. He said, cut the gloves, I can't see. And Dundee is the great Muhammad Ali before he got to that great place. Without this fight, he doesn't become great.
Yep.
And the great, you're great, you have to have someone great with you. And the great Angelo Dundee said, no, this is for all the marbles, baby. We don't cut no gloves. We don't cut. And he took a sponge, he wet it, and he drowned him. He just got everything he could. He just drowned his eyes and tried to get whatever was in there out. And then when the bell rang, he said, he picked up the stool, he said, now run. Go run. And he said, he ran, he moved around, and then eventually he came back.
They think that they put something on the gloves?
Well, they think that
the opponent's
first they thought that there was something amiss because Liston had this reputation, being around the wise guys, whatever you want to call them, and being that he did time in jail and he had that image and everything. I thought he was a great fighter, Liston. I thought he was one of the great heavyweights. He was really great. It was sad, his life, how it went. But I thought he was a great fighter. But he was, right away, a lot of people thought, and Ali, I'm sure, thought it too, that they did something, to
put something on it,
put something on his gloves to blind him. And Dundee had the best explanation. Dundee said, no, you know what it was? What I think it was Liston had gotten cut, and he thinks that they used Monsol solution to close the cut. And that it got Ali hitting him. Of course, it got on his gloves. Yep. And then his gloves touched his face. He got in his eyes. Yep. Or Liston's gloves touched him and it got in his eyes. Either way. So Dundee's explanation was that he thought it was Monsol that got in his eyes and did that.
But if that could burn your eyes, wouldn't it seem crazy of Liston's corner to put it on his own face where it might drip down into the eye?
Well, what you do is you put a gauze underneath. I mean, listen, These guys are experts at doing it.
Yeah.
They put it on a Q-tip and they're putting it right into that cut.
Gotcha.
And then once you put in the cut, it's kind of like closing the door. You put cold Vaseline over it. So
that's what I wanted to ask you real quick before we continue with that. I think there's a misconception amongst a lot of fans, and even DC at one point said they got to get Vaseline in the cut. And the way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is you put the adrenaline or whatever medicine you're using into the cut, then the cold Vaseline goes over the medicine and holds the medicine in. The Vaseline itself isn't what's causing the coagulation.
No. Perfect. Listen, here's what it takes to be a great cornerman. And then, by the way, Angelo Dundee was also, besides a great cornerman, he was a great cornerman. Here's what it takes. It takes ice water in your veins. You got to be cold. You got to be calm. You can't panic. That's number one. Number two, you got to put pressure on the cut. You got to have the right medicine, the right medications. You got to have the right coagulant. You get it in, you clean them off quick. It's all time. You only got 60 seconds. As a matter of fact, probably more like 50 by the time you get in there and everything else. So, because you got a 1 minute rest and you lose about 10 seconds by the time you get in there. So, you got to get in quick. You got to clean it real quick. And you got to get the medicine. You got to have the right coagulant. You get it in, then you need pressure. To keep the pressure on it so it gets a chance to coagulate, where it gets a chance to take. As much time buy as much time as you can. And then the final thing is what you touched on. Cold, not Vaseline. The real cut men, the real ones. And there's always ones that are better than the customer would say, yeah, some of those guys are just shoemakers. I don't know where that term came because I love shoemakers. Shoemakers are talented and we need good shoemakers. But that was one of those, phrases that came in boxing. Yeah, guys are shoemakers. And so...
Otherwise known as a cobbler?
Yeah, well, but not really. Like they were being, derogatory towards the guy, like saying,
gotcha.
he's not a top guy. But like I said, shoemakers are hard to find. Good shoemakers, they're very valuable. But in this case, that's how they use the terms. And the Vaseline's the last thing you put on. You wait till the last second, keep the pressure, and then you put the cold slab of Vaseline so it holds. And it keeps the medication, the coagulant in there. And then the final thing you need, you know what you need? You need help from your fighter to not get hit again. To not get that, and you've seen it on TV, he gets hit the first shot, he comes out, and the Vaseline goes south, goes flying. You got to get the guy to move like Ali did, move around, a guy that's elusive, that he give the medication, give the medicine a chance to work. That's how you get a great comeback.
But that's the big misconception, is that I think a lot of people are under the impression that you just put a ton of Vaseline and the more the better, but it's actually counterproductive.
The Vaseline doesn't do the job. It
seals it in.
It seals the medicine that's going to do the job in. That's all it does.
And a lot of times if you use too much, it can get on the guy's gloves and then go right back in your eye, and that's also counterproductive.
The guy could hit you, and if you have a big lob, it could go right.
Yeah.
Obviously, you could blind yourself to that extent. But I just saw, it was really interesting, and I know no one else would talk about it. Why would they? Or even know to talk about. But when I saw it, and listen, it might not have been an iron-based coagulant. I don't know what they allowed, but... you really don't want to use iron base. There's a lot of reasons why you don't want to. But when I looked, and I just looked dark, and that's one of the telltale signs if someone's using, in our business, it would be illegal substance, where it starts to get dark, and the reason why, it actually cauterizes. Yeah, the iron base, it actually cauterizes the wound. It starts to cauterize right there. And that's why it turns, black, dark. So but either way, listen, they did a good job with it. I wonder what they do use. That would be interesting to know. I wonder, I would assume it's the same things we do in boxing, but you're not supposed to assume anything, right? That makes a you-know-what out of you-know-who. But at the end of the day, it wasn't so much even that. It was his resiliency, it was his toughness, his determination. And I'll say one other thing. Our man Rob, I put a few tweets up, and one of them I put up before the fight was that all fighters, both these fighters, are going in with attention paid to, certain things that it's always paid attention to, where you're doing it for reasons why you get in there. Family, legacy, pride. And then I said, add one to the list tonight that might give Dillashaw a little edge. It's called redemption. Redemption is powerful.
People love a redemption story.
It's powerful. It's powerful. Ken, it's powerful. When you think that you made a mistake, he admitted, he owned up.
Yep.
I have respect for Dillashaw, and that's why I said he did his time. I embrace him. I welcome him with open arms because he did his time. He paid the price they put on him. And he admitted to his mistake. He didn't hide from it. He didn't try to make up the dog ate my,
my good supplements.
My supplements, and I was stuck with bad supplements, this damn dog, He didn't try to do that, and the dog died 2 days later. He didn't try to take us down that crazy road.
Yep.
He was honest about it. And he was also honest about what this meant to him, that this meant getting back to prove to people that what he was before wasn't because of something it shouldn't have been because of.
That's a good point.
It was really important to him. Extra important. I know it was important to Sandhagen, don't get me wrong.
Well, that's a very good point. He wanted to tell people, I don't need anything to win.
He wanted, if he loses this fight, like it or not, people are going to say, oh, the only reason he won all those fights because he was doing that stuff. And that was going to stick with him. And for him, for that to be worthwhile, for all those years to mean something, all those victories, all of that hard work, everything that he went through, he had to come back and win this fight. He had to come back and win now. And there was no tomorrow. There was no buffer cushion, margin for anything there. Well, you could lose it and then you come back. No, he had, because again, people would have jumped on him and said, oh yeah, come on. You only won those fights because you were a cheater. So, redemption. He had to redeem him, his word, his name, it was about his legacy. It was about who he was. That what he did before wouldn't disappear. That it would mean something. And I think that he fought that way. And that redemption, part of that did win the fight for him. That feeling, that power, that source. At the end of the day, that's how I see it, baby.
One other thing I want to touch on before we sign off is he came into the fight, I think on his left knee, had an MCL injury, or right knee, MCL injury, and then during the fight, the good knee got compromised early on. He got caught in like a bit of a leg lock, and you could see it kind of hyperextend. And they even addressed it in the corner, like, yo, enough about the knee. You have to go now. And he picked it up. And even early in the fight, I said to Rob, it looks like Sandhagen might be pulling away here. And to Dillashaw's credit, he came back on basically 2 bad knees. Did you pick up on that? What do you think?
I think what I always think, and why I have so much respect for my guys in boxing and the guys in this sport. I think that Webster's dictionary doesn't get it right. When you look up the definition of a fighter, I don't even know what that definition is, but I know they don't get it right. Make a fist and put your thumb inside, and it's called fisticuffs, and should retain a certain form. It goes back to the Marquis of Queensberry, and no. The definition in fighter should be the ability to overcome. That's what it is and always has been for me, and for so many of these guys. That's what it is. It's about finding a way when it seems like there is no way. Finding a way to overcome. And that's how you judge these guys as far as their greatness. I've said it before. I said it on the great Joe Rogan's podcast a few years ago, where, and I know Dustin Poirier has used this quote from me, where I always say a fight isn't a fight until there's something to overcome. Up until then, it's kind of like an exhibition. It's kind of like athletic exercise. How fast can I be? How smart can I be? You know, how strong can I be? Whatever. But until there's something to overcome, then it becomes, how willing am I to go to a place that most people would not go? How willing am I to go with a compromised knee, a new compromised knee, and still find a way to keep going? Still find a way to keep going. That's what makes these guys so great. That's why they can never get paid enough, as far as I'm concerned. Never get paid too much. Never. Because they're willing to go to a place, an often dangerous place, where they're not sure if they're going to come out of that freaking place. They're not. And they're willing to go there. And I'll finish with this. A little humor, but, you know, because I love you, and I know you're going to appreciate that. But your favorite quarterback of all time, you know, what's his name again?
Tom Brady.
Oh, Tom Brady. Yeah, I'm glad you remember. In fact, it came out that he played a whole season with a knee that was, I think it was what was it? The injury was I think it was
same thing. MCL.
MCL, right? Yeah, he had a torn MCL and. He fought the whole year with it.
Yep. Oh, I know. He used to call me on the weekends.
We all fight. Whatever we do, it's still a fight.
Yep.
And then when you do it at that level, it's a fight. And I'm sure he called you.
Yeah, he'd call me, ask me, Ken, should I keep going? What do you think? I would say, Tommy, you know you got this.
I'm glad you've forgiven him, because I know you were tiny bit perturbed at him that he left your neighborhood there, the old stomping grounds up in New England.
Titletown.
And Titletown. I think we ended that, Titletown.
Before we end anything, tell me about the new Box Raw collection. We see it in the flesh here now. We've talked about it before. It's the 36 collection, available at boxraw.com. Looks fantastic.
They make good stuff, Box Raw. They do. And I'm just honored that they asked me that they would do a line with me. Yeah, and we called the Teddy Atlas 36 line. It's good stuff. If it wasn't my line, and somebody let me wear it and I saw it, I would say the same thing. I would. You have to trust my word. It's good. It's a good quality. It's really made well. And the 36 comes from what I've said for years. And talking about Dustin Poirier earlier, he uses that same saying. He just adjusted it to 25 instead of 30, because in their business it's 5 5-minute rounds. In my business, 12 3-minute rounds, and you can make life fair. You can make life fair. No matter how life has treated you, no matter how tough it's been, no matter how unfair it might have been to you, if you're tough enough, if you're willing enough, if you're prepared enough to get in that ring in 36 minutes, you can make life fair. You can make up for all the things, the injustices that are out there sometimes. You can clean the slate. And if you go through the history, we love to talk history. If you go through the history of fighting, in any fighting, when I remember Customato used to always tell me, listen, obviously you got to teach the guy how to fight. That's the most important thing. That's pretty damn important. But then to fight like a champion, you got to feel like a champion. You got to have the confidence. You got to feel like, and you got to look like a champion. You know, it's important to look good. And if you go through the history of fighting, if you will, and when anyone, whether it was the Vikings, whether it was the samurai, whatever, the great fighters, warriors, they always wore a certain garb when they went to battle. They always wore a certain garb that made them feel, you know, the part.
I'm partial to the Scottish Highlanders.
There they are. And you would look good in those kilts, I'll tell you that.
That was the name of my high school, Somerville Highlanders.
You would look good in that those plaid kilts. You would look great. But listen, so they make good stuff, and their stuff looks good, and it makes you feel good.
Yep. Boxraw.com. Check out the Teddy Atlas 36 collection. And with that, Teddy, It's about 190 in here now. We toughed it out though, we got it done. This wasn't a fight until we had to overcome this heat. We did it. Thank you for doing it. It was great to see you in person. I hope everyone liked it. Stop what you're doing and hit subscribe on the YouTube channel, please. Leave a comment, do your thing. I feel
whatever
like
you do, don't insult him, please. Please. He's a sensitive son of a gun.
I feel like one of my kids watching their YouTube channel.
And one other thing, congratulations. He just won a big race. He didn't even mention it. He just won a big race where they had to run up. Don't ask me who wants to run up and down a freaking hill like 100 times. Forget about that part. Whether or not I would suggest you do that, especially in this heat. But he did it. And actually came in second. We always tell the truth.
Yeah.
But there was 100 races, and he got beat by a younger guy, and it was very close.
Shout out to Jesse Isler and Sarah Blakely for hosting us at their house for the annual Hell on the Hill. Lots of good people. Everyone there is a quality person. It's the best thing about this event, and thank them for having us. But I was going to say, Teddy, I feel like when my kids are watching the YouTube channels, I always hear the YouTubers saying, hey guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, drop a comment. Thanks for being with us. And with that, thanks for being with us, guys. Appreciate you as always. Have a great week. We'll be back with you next week.